Well, I think we're about to find out a whole bunch of stuff that we already knew. This Russiagate declassification of documents is revealing things that I think if most people were watching and looking and critically analyzing the conditions in the previous administration around Trump and Russiagate, this is not new news. But I'm going to react to this story on the Hill.
Well, CIA Director John Ratcliffe is stepping into the fray, backing up claims by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard that Russiagate's origins can now be tied directly to a coterie of intelligence officials and also former President Barack Obama, who allegedly directed these officials, James Comey, John Brennan, and James Clapper, to reach stronger conclusions about Russia's impact on the election, even though they knew there was no hacking. Now, Ratcliffe says
sometimes you just see what you are looking for. So probably as this thing unfolds, it's going to be a situation where the Obama administration and the Clinton camp wanted to believe that there's no way that Donald Trump, who was a political unknown, a joke when coming into the race initially, they just wanted to believe that there's no way that he could have actually won legitimately. And this is why, although Hillary Clinton did concede the election, she has ever since that day been walking around saying that Donald Trump, even in his first term, was an illegitimate president. And to add insult to injury, after losing the next election, for him to come back and win not only the popular vote or the electoral college, but also the popular vote, that just rubs salt in the wounds.
The Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was also involved. Let's watch his interview on Fox News.
Declassification and sent that to the Department of Justice that will come out in the John Durham report classified annex. And what that intelligence shows, Maria, is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what Hillary Clinton was up to.
Later in that interview, Ratcliffe said he didn't think the statute of limitations would apply here, but he would leave it to Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Justice Department to make a final determination about that. Now, look, to be clear, the report on Hillary Clinton's involvement still forthcoming. What you saw there was a teaser trailer of sorts. But this all comes amidst a major push by Gabbard and the Trump administration to reopen the issue of Russiagate's origins. We now know major claims in mainstream media about the extent of Russia's malfeasance and its connection to the Trump campaign were serially exaggerated at the behest of countless intelligence officials.
Of course it was, because people didn't want him to be president in the first place. And then when he was president, there was everything done to undermine the first administration. And this was because I think they saw him as a threat. And also, I think probably a little bit of jealousy. So you have this businessman who was also a TV celebrity who runs for president, and first time out the gate actually wins. Whereas you have a lot of other people who have been in politics for years, if not decades, and have always aspired to be president, including Biden, because remember, Biden had run for president several times and failed. So you now have this person come out of nowhere and win. How can this be? There's no way that this can happen legitimately. So I think it's one of those things where they just wanted to believe it. They saw something that they could run with. And everyone that was upset about Trump winning the first time around needed something. They needed something to help them cope with the reality that he was actually the 45th president.
Clinton, perhaps even more so than Obama, actually clearly bought into the idea that Russian activity cast doubt on Trump's win in 2016. She repeatedly called him an illegitimate president, Trump. In fact, even years later, in 2020, long after the ideological underpinnings of Russiagate had collapsed, Clinton was still making such claims. Here she was on a podcast in 2020.
One thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was. and how he was involved in the seeking of foreign help and then the utilization of it, and how Roger Stone was critical to that.
You see how she could look into the camera and say this in a way as if she didn't know where the actual root story came from. This is the thing about politicians. Maybe it's because they tell themselves the same thing so often that they actually believe it. It reminds me of one of my favorite episodes of Seinfeld with George, where he's teaching Jerry how to lie because Jerry has to pass a lie detector test, and Jerry says, "It's not a lie if you believe it." And it's so true. So maybe these politicians, in their mind, they start to believe what they've told themselves for so long and forget that actually, potentially, according to this documentation, it may be that the story was planted by her campaign in the first place. And if I recall correctly, I think that the original origin of the birther movement against Barack Obama was also from the Hillary Clinton camp when she was running against Barack Obama. You'd have to check that, but I think there was some evidence that came out where someone from her team actually said, yeah, we had come up with this. She moved away from it quickly when she saw that it was not politically advantageous, and then obviously Trump ran with it. But I think the origin of it was somewhere in the Hillary campaign when she was running against Trump.
That.
Now, Hillary Clinton is, of course, entitled to continue being a sore loser about 2016, to shake her fist and say she really won that election. It's not true, but she can say it. But the American people deserve to know if fake and discredited intelligence about Russia that smeared the Trump campaign was pushed by her own team. And if Ratcliffe has the goods, I, for one, look forward to seeing it. Hillary Clinton, the original election denier.
Fine, but the word coup, treason, it's just so overly exaggerated. I think at the very
When they're
best,
talking about January 6th, you mean?
No, I'm talking about in January 6th terms.
Okay.
If you want to talk about somebody
That's
trying to
the coup and
overthrow
the
an
treason.
election,
Okay.
I think Trump describing this as a coup is really rich because a coup would be trying to stop somebody from actually taking office. Obama never did that to President Trump.
Well, if the allegations are true, then absolutely that is the case. If the allegations are true, and I'm not saying that they are or they aren't, but I don't like how they change the definition of things in the application depending on who they like and who they don't like. If you're going to say that this is not a coup, if you're going to say that, this doesn't rise to the level of treason, then a lot of the other actions that you may disagree with that the Republicans have done, you shouldn't call those things treasonous, and you shouldn't call those things a coup either. But what Lindsey will always do is the yeah, but, because her position will always be that to an extent the Democrats are operating from the moral high ground, whereas the Republicans, because of their ideology, are always having a nefarious approach to doing things. Even though sometimes the actions are exactly the same, what people will say is, well, we're doing it as Democrats for the greater good, whereas Republicans are doing it to disadvantage brown and black people.
And so trying to charge him with anything or even using the words coup don't make sense, especially coming from the man who literally has been connected in many ways to
He said, I reject
January
your conclusion
6th.
that Russia didn't do this. Find me evidence that they did.
No, but this stems from the fact that he wasn't briefed, and that happens all the time. People aren't briefed. Presidents aren't briefed every day. That can happen. And he's still looking for connection to make sure that Russia is not impacting our election. And no one ever said that they were on the voting boxes and messing up things. People said they were infiltrating the systems, trying to make American voters dissuade away from Hillary Clinton and also emphasize President Trump. And so you should.
But they didn't say it like that. They were basically saying that Trump was working with the Russians to undermine election integrity. That's what they said straight out. And then when he did win, they said that the reason why he won was because of interference of the Russians. They didn't say it in a nuanced way. They said it in a straight up way, which is why they kept saying that Trump was an illegitimate president. So now that Lindsey's trying to clean up the language, it's convenient. But at the time, a lot of people, and probably to this day, still believe that Trump did not win that first administration. There's a lot of things that people still believe, despite it being debunked and it being retracted, obviously in a less public way. But a lot of these news stations have said, well, this wasn't true or that wasn't true. But people who just don't want to like the current administration will continue to believe those things, even though they've been debunked.
Wouldn't want that. I don't understand why anybody would want that. So the most that can be charged here is that maybe Democrats were looking into this too much, but would you prefer they didn't look into it at all? Is that the alternative? Maybe too much time was wasted. Should you go to jail for treason? Because literally, treason has to occur in wartime. That's the actual definition. You know, it has to be a rebellion against the government.
Like this is
I've
so
said
the
I don't
words
think it's
used.
treason.
Treason is not a.
But this is like coming from the top officials in Trump's presidency that Obama might be treasonous and this is a coup. And so like part of this has to just be like, listen, again, divert your attention from Epstein. I have some really good red meat for you to look at. And I think this is just silly. Everyone knows this is not going anywhere. And for the same people that were critical about how much time Democrats spent pursuing President Trump in a variety of ways, you shouldn't then want to go back and repeat those tactics that angered your entire base.
Why not? I think it would anger the base more not to do that. So politics is a contact sport. And this is why they should step very carefully when they're pushing precedent or when they're doing things that, you know, border on unconstitutional, because once it's been done once, it's a Pandora's box. Once it's open, that's it. Everything's out. It's just like this whole thing about impeaching the president. They impeached Donald Trump twice. Now they've set a precedent that kind of pursue that because you don't like the person in the White House, which is silly and it's counterproductive and it's not what the American people want or need. They want their legislators to pass laws that are going to make their lives better. Remember, they did this big production about January 6th. And if you are a person that said, you know, that was warranted and we needed to do that, then I think you should also consider that if what is being said here is true, that maybe it does warrant an investigation and follow through, because this would be a huge scandal if it is true. So it's allegations at the moment. There is some evidence coming out, but if it's true, then it should rise to the same level of the scrutiny that January 6th had.
It's not really what you want to do, right?
But shouldn't Hillary Clinton receive just as much contempt for denying the outcome of an election as Donald Trump did? She continues to this day to maintain, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, that Russian involvement makes the 2016 outcome suspect, when we know that's not the case. We know, and they knew at the time, there was no hacking of the machine. So then later, after Obama said, well, that's not good enough, find something, then they had to suggest to the press that there was this widespread social media influence campaign, that then there was a fever pitch about that story in the mainstream media, like all these intelligence officials behind closed doors are saying they can't believe what they're seeing about the level.
See, doesn't this sound a lot like the thing that they criticized Trump for doing, for questioning things that he had questioned about? So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If he had no right to say, well, I don't feel that I lost. I mean, he left the White House. At the end of the day, he's back, but he left, right? So yes, the courtesies and the niceties of conceding and making the phone call and showing up for the inauguration, maybe it was low class not to do that, but he did leave, right? But when he then questioned the outcome, and he did take it through court and he did lose, but when he took it through court, everyone criticized them for even filing the lawsuits. But Hillary Clinton went on a revenge sob story tour where consistently she would say that he was illegitimate, that he didn't win fairly, Russia, 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 Russia. And she wasn't criticized for that. Stacey Abrams isn't criticized for, you know, her gubernatorial loss, and she's saying that she didn't lose fairly. You know, so listen, people will be sore losers. We should know this as adults. We know that people are sore losers. But if you're going to criticize one side for being a sore loser, then you have to criticize the other, and you have to apply the same standard and the same principle to both sides.
Level of influence on social media that was Russian-derived. Years later, we find out it was like nothing. It didn't do anything. It was small. It was not a significant sum of money. It was not a significant number of accounts. They were not targeted at swing voters. Nothing of that size and scope, and yet she's still talking about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So Hillary Clinton did concede, unlike President Trump. She did concede, and so that's a big step in saying I lost the election. So going around bringing up Russia and connecting is her prerogative, but again, bringing it up as a federal issue where Tulsi Gabbard is coming in the middle of press conferences and saying the entire Democratic Party needs to be reviewed, people need to go to jail, memes being posted on President Trump's page that have him chasing down President Obama like O.J. Simpson, all ridiculous, all overstated. Mind you, it did tickle me when I saw it, but it's ridiculous because this is about the fact that a woman says, okay, Russia, in connection to having some conversations about ruining my run for presidency, was meddling and hacking into my emails, right? Directly attacking the Democratic Party in this process, and also putting out content on social media through bots and real people, Russian people, that were trying to sway voters in the direction of President Trump. So whether you like it or not, our government and our American citizens shouldn't want that type of interference. It wasn't the interference that was so dramatically overstated, like somebody came in and actually made someone vote for someone else, but the fact that they were involved in this.
But that's what they tried to make people believe. They tried to make people believe that that was the case. So it was overstated. It wasn't a subtle thing. It was overstated, and it was said to be the only reason why Donald Trump won.
Conversation. We should all have a raised eyebrow to that, and I don't think that was problematic to have somebody from the Democratic Party look into that. If not everyone.
I will say I'm getting sick of this. I'm getting sick of promises that, oh, you won't believe what's in these files. He kind of did that here, saying, here's a name for you, Hillary Clinton, and wait till this report comes out. Just give me the report. I don't trust you people to, it's a little bit of the Epstein thing. You won't believe what we have to show you. Just show it to me and I'll decide if
everything's a bombshell.
My mind is blown. Right, if everything's a bombshell, then nothing is. It's the over-promising, the under-delivering. We're really sick of that. I think even diehard supporters of our president, Donald Trump, are getting sick of that. The partial MAGA revolt over the Epstein file stuff is a good example. So don't promise, don't tease, just reveal, release, declassify,
and even
decrypt,
this whole thing is coming from looking review.
I totally agree. So this whole thing, just come with the facts, follow the procedure, follow the laws. If people need to be subpoenaed, subpoena the people, and let's get it over and done with. There's more important things that need to be dealt with than the petty, smaller things. So build a case, present the case, then execute the case. And let's move past it. And let's also shore up the system so that we don't have to worry that there's a lack of integrity in the voting process, because the voting process and the democratic process underpins a stable democratic society. So that's my views. As I always say, I'm just a guy with a Wi-Fi connection and a camera. So if you don't agree, if you have comments, make sure you put them in the comments. As a smaller channel, I really appreciate that, because there are people that watch but don't subscribe. But by subscribing, it shows that you do think that the content that I'm creating is valuable. I do my best just to add my view. I'm not here to be a mean person and be provocative. I will, attack ideas. I try not to attack people, and I try to add a nuanced view, call balls and strikes. So yeah, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and you can share the channel with anyone that you feel just wants to get a impartial, kind of down the middle, this is what's right, this is what's wrong view. Whether or not you agree with me, I do appreciate you watching. Take care.